On Tech News Today, the NSA's mass surveillance does more damage to the U.S. economy. The iPhone gets super cheap, and we'll tell you where to get a cheap iPhone. And an amazing Google research project is coming to consumers. All that and more coming up right now on Tech News Today.
This is Twit.
Bandwidth for Tech News Today is provided by CacheFly at CACHEFLY.com.
This is Tech News Today for Friday, June 27th, 2014. This episode is brought to you by Gazelle, the fast and simple way to sell your used gadgets. Find out what your used Apple and Android devices are worth at Gazelle.com. Tech News Today is the show where we talk about the tech news with the journalists who report it. Welcome to Tech News Today. I'm Mike Elgan. With me, of course, is co-host Jason Howell and also Friday co-anchor Don Reisinger. What's going on, man?
Now.
How you guys doing?
Hanging in there. How are you? I'm looking, Mike, you're looking as good as ever. I can see.
Thank you. And so are you. Your videos look stunning.
Stunning. Well, I look stunning. The video looks pretty good.
I see. Well, you do look very fresh in a sort of like, I don't know, kind of morning. I don't know if you're a Seinfeld fan, but Morning Mist, I think, is what that was called.
Morning Mist. Yes, yeah. I think it is.
George Costanza. Anyway.
Smell like the beach.
Your reference, yes. Another Seinfeld reference.
That's right. You like that?
So, yeah, I do. So, Jason,
yeah,
you and I are special today, and the reason we're special is we're wearing Android Wear.
You got it. So you got the LG one, right?
That's
the
right.
Gwatch.
That's right.
Or the G Watch, as
the G
most people call it. But
That's right.
I like the Gwatch.
The Gwatch, I like that.
And I got the Samsung Gear Live. I always want to say Gear Life, but that's not it. It's Gear Live, and it looks a lot like their Gear Watch, basically.
First impressions?
First impressions, I think more so on the Android Wear side, kind of what it does to extend notifications to your wrist. It's come in really handy. I have to say, being in the car and wanting to like queue up navigation and not having to like go to my phone and hit the navigation button or go into Google Now and do a voice search for navigation or whatever. Just lifting up my hand and saying navigate to Petaluma, and then that's it. And suddenly my phone magically lights up and kicks right in. That was really cool. Having the extended notifications on my wrist is nice. However, the other side of this, right, is that it's all hands-free, but if you touch it, it will, like, target, shoot off a voice action. If I'm holding my kids or if I'm doing something that's very hands-on, it keeps lighting up because the screen keeps getting touched, and I've had, messages get archived when I didn't do it, that sort of thing. So that's Android Wear. And as far as the watch, I mean, this is the $200 Samsung Android Wear watch. They're launching this, and I think it's solid. I wish that the strap was removable, and the way that this like pins in there, like the two prongs into the holes, it actually comes undone pretty easily. So something to consider. What about you?
Well, my view is that I wanted to hate it. I wanted to say that it was clunky, that it was not the right form factor, and even the Moto 360 is a little bit too high off the wrist. It's a pretty bulky thing for a watch. But I was completely won over by using it, and it reminds me of the iPad because, and I'm going to be writing a column about this, or I have written a column about it. It'll be posted tomorrow on Computer World. But my view is that this is just like the iPad. Everybody's saying the exact same things about this Android Wear watches as that they were saying about the iPad. It's clunky. The screen smudges. You can't read it in direct sunlight. What's the use for it? It's a problem in search of it's a solution in search of a problem. It's unnecessary, etc. And
it's ugly.
The thing that sort of changes everything is when you use it, you realize the wrist is a perfect place for information that's delivered in the right way. And Android Wear is in the zone of delivering that information right. It's stripped down to messages to their bare minimum amount of message. It's not like the existing smartwatches where they're little icons and it's just like a little smartphone where you have to navigate through screens of icons, then you launch an app, and then it's not like that at all. Basically, each nugget of information is its own little thing. And again, this is, and here's the thing that didn't occur to me until I started using it. This is the only platform that I've ever seen that launches out of the box. In fact, this hasn't launched yet. This thing is still something for the future as far as the public is concerned. It's launching out of the box with a killer app, and that killer app is Google Now.
Yep.
Google Now is probably the most interesting product Google has ever come out with. However, as it's existed on iOS and Android and also in the Chrome browser, it's something you have to go find in order to use. You have to seek it out for the most part in order to get these preemptive contextual notifications. Well, now that it's on Android Wear, it has a real home, a real place where those things make a lot of sense. Google Now is the killer app. Even without any other apps, this thing is already worth the price of admission because it puts Google Now on your wrist. That's my opinion so far. So,
Mike, your opinion, please. This thing, you might as well buy 10 of these when they come out. I want one from you. It sounds like you're going to go crazy over this thing.
Yes.
I mean, it's, okay, all right. I haven't tried it out, so let me be fair. So let me put that out there. I haven't tried it out. I find these things to be incredibly ugly. They are no way a fashion. Are you going to go to a wedding wearing that thing?
I'm going to go to my son's wedding in October wearing this thing, and my son will be wearing one too.
Actually, you'll probably be wearing the Moto 360 at that point.
He's going to wear Google Glass too if his wife-to-be will let him.
You got to be, well, then this is quite the wedding, I'm telling you.
Yeah.
It just, they look ugly. The software, I think, we really need to flesh out before we, really get a sense of how good it's going to be. And I think the third-party app support is something that could ultimately make this a big winner or a big loser. But, I look at this and I say the Moto 360 is cool because of its design. It's this, the circular design. I look at those things, they're squared off. They're kind of to me. No, I haven't tried it. So I'm saying that. You guys have. You're cool. I'm not cool. But, at the end of the day, what about Apple's iWatch? Is that going to come around and make you wish? I'm not sold on any of these things, on any of these wearable technologies. I don't find them at this point to be all that useful in their concept. Again, I haven't tried them, but in their concept, I don't see why after, say, a month, I don't know, the whole thing, the whole luster just starts to wear off. And you kind of go, oh, there's that weird looking thing on my wrist again, and I guess I should talk to it. I'm a cynic, Mike. I'm a cynic.
Well, you
I
said,
look at this.
You've only said one thing that I agree with, which is that Jason and I are really cool because we have these watches. But
well, all right,
but
stop rubbing my nose in it.
But what you're saying though is the same thing people said, and the same thing everybody said about the iPad before it shipped. It seems so useless, but when you use it, the experience is really great. And I agree with you about the iWatch. The iWatch could be really great, and it'll come down to whether, initially it'll come down whether the Siri experience competes with the Google Now experience. And I think that Google Now currently has the edge because of its preemptive notifications. It reads your Gmail and then says, oh, you've got a flight coming in or whatever. That's really powerful. And it's a perfect thing for a watch, And Google has been tweaking it and improving it and adding features constantly for a couple of years now, I think. And now it finally has a home, and so that's really great. Although I have the feeling that Apple's going to have a really elegant watch, and Siri will probably be pretty good, if not great, at some point. And again, the problems with it, as you pointed out correctly, it is clunky, it is ugly. There are no apps. The apps that do exist don't really work. I mean, it took me 2 hours to get this thing configured because it's a developer pre-release version. That's not going to be the case in the future. Well,
stop! Yes, it will. If this thing's up, it's a lemon, Mike.
Okay, but you know that these are the kinds of things that are solvable. You know they're going to get smaller, more elegant. Somebody's going to come out with a super elegant version, and you know that the app. Somebody's going to come out with some killer apps, But I think it's really fascinating. Out of the box, Google Now makes it a killer device.
Big question, last question before we move on.
Should we do the news at some point? Yeah, go ahead.
Well, hold on. Just one quick second, okay? I got to ask this.
My watch is telling me it's time to go. No, go ahead.
This is the key to it. No, go ahead. Will the average person actually want to use this? Not a tech guys like us or the girls like us. I'm saying the average consumer who cares about, you know, the cool, whatever, David Yurman thing, watch and all this stuff. Are they going to want to wear this thing? I say no until Apple comes along and maybe makes it cool. But until then, I say no matter what we want.
Yeah, and that's a different question altogether about the popularity and mass acceptance. What I've found, though, is that after being a glasshole for a while, which is not an easy thing to do, it's not an easy thing to be, before you go out into the public wearing Google Glass, you have to sort of gird your loins and brace yourself because you're doing something that's controversial and that potentially could end in a confrontation, and you do it because it's worth it. In my case, in the cases where I do wear Google Glass in public, I decide that the benefits of contextually aware notifications and the other things that Google Glass gives you are worth the ostracization and
like
loneliness.
You're a Google geek.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm calling it now. You're
Right,
a Google geek.
Exactly.
I'm saying it.
But Android Wear gives you 95% of the benefits of Google Glass with zero of the problems or downsides.
It's a pivot for Google. I think it's a very convenient pivot for Google because their push behind Glass has not worked out so well in the public opinion, and that's going to be a hard product to push out to the consumer base and have them take serious, or have people want to take the risk that you're talking about, Mike. In my short time with Android Wear, it gives you a lot of those benefits with a form factor that people are used to seeing, at least a watch. And as it gets smaller, it'll get better. But yeah, I agree. It's not the most elegant looking hardware, but I think it's a good indication of the future of this kind of technology and this kind of convenience. More so than Glass was.
Yeah, and nobody's going to notice it. Nobody's going to approach you and say, "Hey, is that the new Android Wear watch?" No, it's invisible as far as the public is concerned.
I'm doing it. I'm doing it. I'm
right,
seeing you. I'm gonna be like,
why don't we go ahead?
Let's get into the news, Mike.
You want to do some news? Let's do some news.
Enough of your Google love. God, we need to move on.
All right, fine. Well, okay. The German government canceled their contract with Verizon. The move is part of a larger program to stop doing business with some American companies after the NSA revelations by Edward Snowden. Thanks again, NSA. You are the gift that keeps on giving. A spokesman for the Interior Ministry of the German government named Tobias Plate said that Germany wants to establish technological sovereignty. And he also said that this is the biggest strain on U.S.-German relations since the Iraq War. And it's understandable to a certain extent because, of course, Chancellor Angela Merkel's personal mobile phone was hacked and eavesdropped on by the NSA. And when the U.S. sat down with Germany to discuss the issue, and Germany said, well, look, we want you to stop doing this, the United States said, no, we're just going to keep spying on you, even though you're a close ally.
Yeah,
so,
we're cool.
Yeah, this is terrible. I hate this whole story because, you know, the NSA could be, I've said before in this program, they should be protecting American businesses from industrial espionage from China and elsewhere instead of harming American business with this kind of monkey business. And of course, they're not going to get away with it. They should have known that this would be exposed at some point. And it's just outrageous that they are actively damaging U.S. businesses and the U.S. economy. There should be lawsuits. There should be arrests. The former head of the NSA should be thrown in jail for lying to Congress. And it's just outrageous as far as I'm concerned. But what do you think, Don?
Yeah, I have to agree. I even think last week when you and I were talking about this, or a couple weeks ago, you said the same thing. This is going to hurt U.S. companies, and now we've seen that this is happening. And I wonder what Verizon's response to the government is going to be here, because the U.S. government, because, you know, there's always been this undercurrent of anger and animosity towards the U.S. government, whether it's, you know, under the Obama administration or the Bush administration. There's always been that issue. It really across the telecommunications business. But now I think it should be a hell of a lot stronger. I mean, this is one of those things where, again, we've put our own fear of defense, or lack thereof, in ahead of everything that would make sense logically. You know, we're doing this against our allies. We're doing this against, allegedly, our own people. You know, at what point do we sit there and say, again, enough's enough? And unfortunately, I feel very powerless here. And it's something I've talked about here before with you. You know, I feel like we don't have a collective group of people that care enough about this to really stand out there and say, hey, look, enough is enough is enough. Oh, I just made that thing bounce. At what point are we going to have that collective group? I mean, how much more news has to come out about the NSA, about spying, about all of the issues that are impacting Americans? I mean, this is going to cause Americans to lose jobs. Let's not also forget that. So at what point are we going to say collectively, enough is enough? I don't know what it's going to take. I just don't know what it's going to take. And I hope it happens sooner rather than later, because the more news that comes out surrounding these NSA leaks and the practices of the NSA, the more it becomes concerning to me, not only of what they did, but that almost that we've come to a point as an American citizenry where a lot of us, not all of us, but a lot of us, where we kind of go, okay, yeah, it happened again.
Yep.
Yeah, and we're just becoming complacent. And the more we become complacent, the more it's a tacit approval of what they're doing, and the more they're going to do it. So I think really something needs to happen here where we all stand up. I mean, I'm not talking revolution, you know what I'm talking about. I'm talking just, look, let's call attention to this stuff and say, you're screwing with all of us, and this isn't improving anything in any way. If there's real proof that this is in some way improved our national security, I'd love to see it, but I don't think that's out there.
Yeah. Part of the problem in the United States is that both the major parties, the Democrat and Republican parties, have both supported these programs, both Republican and Democratic presidents, Republican and Democrat Congress people, and that's a big problem. We do have many parties in this country, but the two major parties systematically exclude the third parties, and that's a big problem with our democracy. But I think to a certain extent, democracy is part of the solution here. There has been action by Congress to roll back some of the surveillance that the NSA is doing. I think there's going to be a lot more, and it'll become a huge issue, I think, in the upcoming presidential election, and there's nothing, as much as they like to, that they can do about that. And of course, democracy is having its toll in terms of Germany. This is a very popular move by Germany for two reasons, one of which is that the German public is outraged by NSA mass surveillance of Germany, and also that the replacement for Verizon there is going to be Deutsche Telekom, a German company. Now, Verizon Germany says that the German version of Verizon is a German company and that they comply with German law and that there isn't a surveillance. And really, that's really not the issue. This is about public outrage and about the government responding and showing that they're standing up to the United States and they're putting in a German company. This is all easy politics in Germany. And so I'd like to see some easy politics in the United States too, and have real safeguards. And again, the biggest problem, which almost nobody talks about around the NSA surveillance, is what this does to our legitimate surveillance. We want the spy agencies to spy on the bad guys, and the fact that they've been caught spying on the good guys means that their ability to spy on the bad guys has been seriously compromised. So the NSA has actually damaged our ability as a country to gather intelligence.
Right.
And this is a huge
problem. How much has Germany helped us in the past and now cannot or won't because they're saying, screw you guys, you know? This is a real issue. You know, in a lot of ways, this hurts our, not what was leaked hurts our security, but the very fact, like you said, Mike, that we are spying on the good guys, that ultimately will hurt our security. Yep. If the good guys stop helping us fight the bad guys.
And JND in the chat room says that I'm discrediting Edward Snowden. Quite the opposite. I think that he gets all the credit for bringing this to the surface, and that I believe that the NSA is at fault in all this. It's not that the problem isn't that their unconstitutional behavior was revealed. It's that they were engaging in unconstitutional behavior. But Jason has informed me that our next guest, who's coming in for a different story, has written on this extensively. So we're going to bring him in now. Cyrus Farivar is a senior business editor for Ars Technica. Hello, Cyrus. Thank you for coming in. We had brought you in for the next story, but we'll keep you around for that story as well. But in the meantime, I'd love to hear your views on this whole topic.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, like you said, it's an important issue. It's gotten a lot of play both in the United States and in Germany. I actually lived in Germany for 2 years, from 2010 to 2012. I was working for Deutsche Welle English, which is the English language broadcaster of the German international radio and TV and online news service. And I can tell you, having been there for a couple of years, that privacy and surveillance is something that Germans and German politicians in particular take very seriously. Viewers may remember that back in the summer of 2010, that was actually when Google Street View came to Germany for the first time. And this was headline news for weeks that summer in Germany. And you had German politicians kind of bending over backwards to state their views on Google Street View. And you had Google took the extraordinary step of allowing Germans to remove themselves, to go to a particular Google website, type in their address, and blur their image of their Street View photographed house. And that was the only country that Google has ever done that for Street View. And, you know, as I talk to people about why they had such a reaction, and I think it's even more so now that we're talking about the United States government, the NSA spying on Chancellor Merkel and other high-level, presumably high-level German government officials, is that Germany has a very strong history of its domestic surveillance. It had the Stasi, the secret police in East Germany. There's a great film that, if you're not familiar with this story, that you should see called The Lives of Others, that sort of talks about what it's like to live under such a society. There are many, many Germans that remember that Angela Merkel herself grew up in communist East Germany. So this is something that they take extremely seriously.
And, of course, Glenn Greenwald, who is the person that Edward Snowden revealed all these documents to, and is the journalist who originally reported most of it, wrote in his recent book, No Place to Hide, about this whole psychology of what happens when you know you're being surveilled. People tend to be far more conformist. They, even if they're not actually being surveilled, if they believe they're being surveilled or think that they're being surveilled or being watched in some way, they change their behavior to conform to social norms. And so I think that's one of the things that Germans are probably far more aware of than Americans are, because, again, they lived under the systems that you talked about in East Germany. And, of course, you know, that's a big reason why authoritarian and totalitarian societies, and why in the novel 1984, surveillance works, because it basically gets people to conform to government expectations just through the knowledge that they're being surveilled. And so it's a horrible state of affairs. We're going to have to move on from this story, but Cyrus, of course, you're going to stick around for the next story. We're going to do a quick ad, and then we'll bring you back for the next story, okay? All right, well, in a sec, we are going to talk about a really cheap iPhone and where you can get it. But first, I want to tell you about Gazelle. If you want to get a cheap iPhone and you have an old iPhone or an old Android phone or some other old device sitting around, and you know you do, I know you're a gadget freak if you watch this show, the place to sell it is, of course, Gazelle. Just go to gazelle.com, Gazelle.com, find the device you'd like to sell, tell them what condition it's in, and you'll get a price. I guarantee you'll be stunned by the amount of money they'll give you for that price. I've always been surprised by how much they pay for your used devices, and in some cases they'll even buy damaged screen devices, because, of course, they can repair them, refurbish them, and they'll put them back into circulation where they should be, which is the environmentally friendly thing for them to do. And, of course, you get paid in cash. There are 3 ways you can get paid: by check, PayPal, or if you choose the Amazon gift card option, you get 5% more money. They send you a box. Shipping is free. There are no listing hassles. It's super, super easy to do. You should just go in there and plug in your device, and you'll see how much they'll pay for it. So find out what your Apple or Android device is worth. Take a minute, go to Gazelle.com and find out. Do it now, because your device may lose value the longer you wait.
Yes.
Well done. Mike, where can we get a cheap iPhone?
Well, you can get a cheap iPhone a lot of places, maybe even through eBay. But no, you need to get over to Walmart, because Walmart has announced a permanent price change on the iPhone 5C and the iPhone 5S. Now, the 16 gig iPhone 5C is now available for $29 over at Walmart, and the iPhone 5S 16 gig is available for $99. That was previously $149 at Walmart. So obviously it's a 2-year agreement and all the jazz that comes along with that. It's AT&T, Verizon, and Sprint, and as far as we know, it's only available in store. But there are a lot of questions surrounding this, and we've brought back Cyrus Farivar over from Ars Technica to talk about it. Cyrus, how you doing?
Good. How are you?
You're still there. All right, we got you. We got you. All right, big question here. Big question. Is this the beginning of the moves by retailers to dwindle their stock and bring on the iPhone 6?
That seems like a logical conclusion. I mean, you know, the Apple refreshes their iPhone line on a regular basis, as we all know. And, you know, it seems like a great way to, particularly to get kind of people in the door to move these things along. Walmart, of course, has a huge footprint of stores and has lots of in-store traffic. And, you know, it seems like a great way to move some phones out the door.
Right.
Now, Don, why do you think this is for in-store purchases only? This is, wouldn't they want to sell these online as well?
Look, I mean, I think Walmart wants to get people in store, and I also think that it's, you know, part of Walmart's strategy that, you know, there's a concept here where for Walmart, I think, it can compete online, and it's trying a little bit better to compete with the likes of Amazon and everyone else online. But its competitive advantage, I think, in its own mind is the brick and mortar. It gets you in store. You buy yourself a $29 iPhone 5C, and next thing you know, you're buying an accessory, you're buying this, you're buying that, and you can walk out of the store with it. You know, there's that. I think that's why we're seeing a shift in same-day shipping with a lot of companies, Amazon being one of them. And I think that's why Walmart is saying, all right, for right now, we still have a competitive advantage by having brick and mortars all over the place. We can get people in store and we can sell more product. I think that's probably the bulk of it, but there could be more to it. I mean, you know, who knows? I mean, but at the end of the day, I think Walmart wants people in store still.
Well, the bottom line is if you want a cheap iPhone, go to Walmart. Right. There you go.
Right.
Cyrus Farivar is at arstechnica.com, and he's also on Twitter at cfarivar. Thank you so much for joining us, Cyrus.
Thanks, Cyrus.
My pleasure. Thank you.
All right. Bye-bye. Well, we told you on past episodes about Google's experimental Project Tango. The idea is to build phones and tablets that can quickly map indoor spaces using special hardware and software. Google announced yesterday that a consumer version of a Project Tango tablet will be built by LG and sold next year to consumers. How cool is this? This completely surprised me, Don. I didn't expect this thing to become a consumer product for many years.
Yeah, well, you know what? I think this is the beauty of having a big company behind a really cool product. They can throw the resources to it, and they can make it happen. Now, I mean, we've been hearing, though, that there are a lot of requirements in terms of memory and other things that we need to make this thing happen, but it looks like Google can push it up, and it's exciting. It really is. I think Project Tango has a lot of, how can I put it? It has the ability to be something special if Google can find a way to make its own way in the marketplace.
Yeah.
Now, you know, I think it's going to take a little bit more education on Google's part, which Google hasn't always been very good at. Google really is about simplicity and making things simple, except for your 2-hour setup of your developer version of the LG G1, the Guach, as Jason called it. But ultimately, I think this is a great thing. LG is really cozying up to Google here, isn't it?
Yeah, and they know that the Samsung-Google relationship is shaky, and they're going to try to slip in there and become the new Samsung.
Now, Mike, while you were at I/O, did you get a chance to play around with the Project Tango tablet at all?
I didn't. The Tango announcement actually took place yesterday, I think, when we were doing this show. But I didn't play with it on the show floor. I have seen the videos, and I do think it's really interesting that Google is they're partnering with a game development platform called Unity.
Yes, so I played with that actually.
And how did that go?
I mean, it was really cool, right? Like basically through the Unity engine, you use the tablet to walk around your physical space and explore, you know, kind of using it as a window into the virtual space. And it was a neat demo, but I think
Did you trip over anything?
No, thankfully I still had my peripheral vision, so I was all good.
That's good.
Which I suppose could be confusing, 2 worlds in one view. But yeah, I think you're right, Don. It's interesting technology that we're all still trying to understand exactly what's useful and beneficial about it. Of course, there's wider benefits. You know, there are cameras and systems that do this kind of 3D mapping technology for a lot more money and possibly higher accuracy that Google's been able to miniaturize into, you know, a mobile device, which is really impressive. So it's cool what they've done. Seeing how that affects consumer desires, I think is what's going to be really interesting about this.
And I think the big thing here at Google I/O, we learned that Google is really doing a lot of innovative things. I mean, this is not a search company anymore, and to describe it as a search company or the search giant or an ad giant is really incorrect. This company is doing things that are way outside the box. It's exciting. I think other firms like LG and the like are going to jump on the bandwagon. And I think maybe in the next 3 to 5 years, it's going to be a Google world if it isn't already. I mean, it's going to be a Google world that we live in, whether it's home automation, whether it's, looking at your watch on your wrist, whether it's wearing those glasses, whether it's going in a driverless car. I mean, Google is doing a lot of really, really neat things, not to mention what it's planning on doing in robotics. Yeah. This is a company that has gone way off the deep end in terms of research and development, and it's exciting to see what it's doing, because I don't think any other company, including Apple, which is the company we always point to say, oh, look what it's doing. Really, I think the new company that we should be looking at for some inspiration about the future of technology is Google.
Absolutely. And you mentioned Apple. They are opposites in how they approach these things. Apple starts with the product and says, how can we create the ultimate product, and what's the technology we need to do some really interesting things that are sellable as a product. And they're very tightly disciplined on a small number of products, whereas Google tends to think, wow, there are all these possibilities. We can't know what's possible in the future, but we have the ability to develop technology to find out. And they're much more open about allowing the larger community to determine the use cases for the products that they come out with. I was at an Android Wear session on Wednesday, and they said, somebody asked the Android Wear people, what exactly is going to be the major use cases? And the guy said, it's up to you guys. We're creating this platform, and we're opening up to developers, and the developers will determine where this thing is really going. And I think that's also the case with Project Tango. And I really can't help but believe that they're going to use Project Tango for their Google cars that drive around to do Street View. Right. Because if you look at the recent innovations in Google Maps, they're using the Operation Ground Truth, where they're slowly developing and enhancing the resolution of what you see in Google Maps to make a 3D model of the actual world by actual 3D modeling. And you put this thing on cars and you put this everywhere, and you can see them automatically constantly upgrading the fidelity and the resolution of what you see in Google Maps to have essentially a virtual reality version of the real world. And add that to the satellite company that they bought recently, where they're going to be constantly mapping with satellite photography. And you can imagine a world where we have essentially a matrix, a duplicate version of our world that's in virtual reality, essentially, where we can fly through the virtual world instead of just looking at a two-dimensional thing. So it's pretty cool. Also, it has to be mentioned that, of course, Project Tango is part of Google's Advanced Technology and Projects Lab, which is part of the Motorola that they kept. They're not selling this part. They gave Lenovo the phone part, but they kept the really cool part, the moonshot part. And of course, ATAP is headed by Regina Dugan, who is a former director of DARPA, the Pentagon's research arm, and probably the best funded research organization in the history of mankind. Well, speaking of really great technology, the FDA approved something that is literally the coolest thing the FDA has ever approved. Tell us about that, Don.
Right, yes. So the rewalk exoskeleton, if you haven't heard about it yet, you will, and you'll probably see it around town. So the rewalk exoskeleton has been in place for some time for use in disability centers and for research trials. And actually in the EU, it was approved back in 2012. Now, what this technology is it allows people who are paraplegics to walk again. It essentially hooks them up into this exoskeleton that has attached motors. It has remote control. It has a computer if they want that. And with help from crutches, they can walk, literally walk again with this technology. Now, the interesting thing here is not only that they can walk, I mean, that's the cool thing, but also that with a wireless controller, they can say, okay, I want to stand up, and they can stand up as straight as can be. They can sit down. They can, basically get their mobility back. And there are a lot of health benefits here for them, including, loss of fat in the body, the building up muscle, cardiovascular success. They're seeing a lot of cardiovascular success here in terms of fixing the issues that are common among people that are paraplegics or quadriplegics. It's a really great technology, but I guess the big question is, why did it take so long for the FDA to approve this thing? The EU had it in 2012. It's been in production for a long time. It was developed by an inventor from Israel who was a quadriplegic. He got in an accident, I think it was in 1987, with on an ATV, and he came up with this amazing technology. Why did it take this long for the FDA to approve it?
Because it takes them too long to approve lots of things. It's a very bureaucratic organization, and they're more concerned about approving something that will cause injuries or problems than they are about rushing technology like this to market. You know, it's interesting. I've been blogging for many, many years, and I've blogged about exoskeleton projects, mostly coming out of Japan. There are a lot of them in Japan. They have exoskeletons in Japan for medical workers that enable a person to just pick up another person and carry them around, and almost all of the weight is borne by the exoskeleton. That's for people who are not paraplegics, for nurses and so on, to be able to carry pretty heavy people around. And they've been developing those technologies for many, many years. The military has been working on exoskeletons so that soldiers in the field can carry 300-pound packs where it feels only like a 50-pound pack, 50 pounds is a lot of weight when you're marching over a long distance, but still, the military has been very interested in this. And every time I've blogged about this, I get lots of email from people who say, where can I buy something like this? And I'm in a wheelchair, or my husband's in a wheelchair, or something like that. I get lots of email. There's bigger demand for this, I suspect, than you might believe. And it's just great that finally people can actually go and buy their own and own their own. And I hope that insurance companies cover this, because it's really fascinating technology, and it's really great to enable people to not only walk where they otherwise couldn't walk, but actually climb stairs and do things like that. So this is really fascinating technology, and I'm really glad that something like this is finally approved. Yeah.
Really expensive technology, and that's why insurance companies hopefully will support it too. I mean, in the EU is going for about $70,000, so this is not a cheap product. But like you said, I do think there's a huge market for this. The FDA says there are about 200,000 people that have spinal cord injuries across the U.S., and I think a lot of those people want their mobility, and this allows for that. So kudos to the FDA, I guess, but really it should have happened a lot sooner. So I think we need to get them moving along a little here.
And
start
the next
pushing papers.
Yeah, exactly. And the next step, of course, is that I want a giant robot that I get inside and functions in the same way, but I want to be able to crush cars with my hands and basically.
And maybe you'll fly.
Yeah. Yes. Thank you. Yeah. Exactly. So, if you guys are watching this, if you're an inventor, get on it, because I.
Do you want to have a robot fight? That'd be cool.
That'd be great. Yeah, we could do that virtually.
I'd beat you up. I think I'd beat you up.
Depends on the robot. It'd be an arms race.
True.
We'll see.
Sure. That's true.
A lawsuit coming up in the Netherlands will decide whether it will be legal in Europe to sell used ebooks. This is really interesting, Don, because a local startup called Tom Cabinet is a secondhand ebook store, and they've got technology that essentially watermarks ebooks and prevents their resale after an initial resale. So you buy the ebook, you can watermark it, and then you can sell it once. And it's not perfect technology, but it's their technology for making sure that you don't just make a bazillion copies and just essentially invalidate or prevent somebody from actually selling an ebook because it's already out in the wild. Now, they were sued by the Dutch Publishers Association, representing Dutch publishers, but this would be a European precedent, depending on how this case comes out. And it's Tom Cabinet, again, not the name of a person, but the name of the company that is selling used books in the Netherlands, is relying on a precedent of a case. I don't know if you recall this, Don Reisinger, UsedSoft versus Oracle. UsedSoft was a German company, and some years ago there was a big court case where UsedSoft wanted to resell Oracle software, and the court came out on the side of UsedSoft, saying that it's legitimate for a company to sell the software that they purchased from the company that creates it. And of course, the Dutch Publishers Association is saying that that is an invalid precedent for this particular case, because this is about copyright and content rather than software, and then there are differences and so on. So we'll see how this goes. I don't see a case like this hitting the United States anytime soon, though. What do you think?
No, but this is a real uphill battle, though. I mean, for the publishers, this is something that happens in the video game industry quite a bit. The publishers in that industry have, in the U.S., by the way, have been decrying that for years. Nothing's ever changed. As you mentioned, the Oracle case was a major one. I don't see this really helping the publishers. I think they need to find a way to embrace it. Again, these copyright holders, the initial copyright holders, the publishers of the worlds, the developers on the gaming side, the publishers on the gaming side, they all want to essentially get the cash from every single sale. And that's really what we're talking about here, that if this company were to sell the used book, the publisher wouldn't get the cash from that. Same thing that happens in the game industry. And ultimately it comes down to this person has legally purchased a product. There's no reason why after selling it back to a company, that company cannot resell it. It's pure supply, demand, market capitalism, I guess. So ultimately, I don't see the Dutch publishers winning here. I don't think any publishers around the world would win here. I think this is a new place, a new frontier for these companies to have to accept. This is just the way it is. These, you know, when we're entering the digital world. For these publishers are entering the digital world now, while most of us have been here for a very long time. And it's unfortunate that they don't really realize that, and they don't see how they can capitalize on that. And that's where they should be thinking and dedicating their efforts, not on, you know, whether we can sue people or not. Like, lawsuits are running amok in this industry right now, and really we're going nowhere with them. So instead of trying all these lawsuits, maybe these companies should try to find a way to make it work. Try your own used sales. Try your own. Do whatever you need to do to make it work. And that's what we're not seeing. I think that in the game industry, these companies might be able to take some cues from the games industry, where you have EA with Origin. You have publishers that are trying to make it so you pay a little bit to get more functionality if you buy a used game, or you buy digital games like Origin through the publishers themselves. But I don't know. You know, these companies, the copyright holders, they get a little bit too antsy with things, and they make moves that don't make a whole hell of a lot of sense. And I think it's going to hurt everyone eventually. So, this will go away.
All right, and if it doesn't, if the used book concept prevails, it'll prevail in Europe, and that probably won't affect the rest of the world. Although it'd be interesting to see how it affects copyrights coming, or ebooks that are produced outside of the Netherlands, outside of Europe. Interesting case. We'll be watching it, and we'll report back to you to tell you how that all comes out. Well, in other news, the Electronic Frontier Foundation and Greenpeace protested mass surveillance by the NSA this morning by flying a 135-foot blimp over a top-secret NSA facility in Bluffdale, Utah. The blimp had giant letters spelling out, "NSA illegal spying below." And they just hovered over the facility that the government can neither confirm nor deny is an NSA facility. That's actually the facility.
In other news, the pilots are now in a black site.
That's right.
And are being interrogated and waterboarded.
They're wearing hoods.
Yeah.
So interesting way to protest. They've used that same blimp for other types of protests, but I think this one is particularly apt. And that's this very same facility, by the way, that some state legislators in Utah have tried to shut down by denying water rights to them. Right. And of course, a massive data center like that needs tons of water in order to cool and do other things. And so by denying the rights, they would have actually shut down the NSA's facility, which they've been working on for a long time. Didn't fly, but it was a nice try. Again, this is another case where we're seeing some pushback from different places coming against the NSA. And again, it was the Bluffdale facility where the NSA was reportedly planning to record every single phone call that happens in the United States and keep those recordings for
Mike,
a few years.
Did they record the call between you and me last week?
We're probably going to find out. If you hear a knock on the door, it's over. So,
all right, sorry about that.
All right, well, that's the tech news today.
Hey,
Don
wait,
Reisinger.
one
yeah,
quick
go
thing,
ahead.
Mike. I'm screwing up your show here. That's all right. Let's real quick. It's for the chat room. It's for Jason, for you, for me. Let's one-word answer. Who won the developers conference in June? Google, Apple. You go, Mike. Go.
Apple did.
Quick.
They're just better. Oh, I only got one word right. Apple.
Apple. Jason.
You do know the show that I host, right? Of course, I'm going to say Google, but that's I probably have it deep in my heart to say that.
Okay, now you
chat room. Apple, Google. We got lots of those.
We have one of each.
Google wins.
I see Apple and Google.
Google, this Apple stuff you just say is nonsense. Google easily won.
You've launched this whole Apple, Google, Apple in the chat room. This is fascinating conversation. In fact, let me quickly. So this is interesting, actually. Let's have a very quick conversation about this. So I'm going to tell you why I think Apple won.
Yeah,
Apple. You know, every year developers conferences are kind of good or kind of bad. Apple was really on fire this year. They were funny. They were engaging, uncharacteristically funny and lighthearted. They were focused in the sense that they did all the consumery stuff in the keynote, and then they said, okay, press, the part that you can understand is done. You guys can go. And then they went off and did the hardcore nitty-gritty stuff with the developers. Google was kind of all over the map. They seemed kind of dour this year. They weren't very excited. Sundar Pichai has the personality of a piece of wood. He seems like a nice guy and seems very brilliant, but he's no.
Oh, yeah, that's what you say right after you say that. Hey, you got a great personality, just like a piece of wood, but you're a nice guy.
Yeah,
you like a nice guy.
I mean, I'm just saying the guy is not the guy is no Federighi. I mean, you know what can I say? But more importantly, they sort of started out with warm and fuzzy consumer stuff, and then they meandered into some pretty heavy duty developer content, and then they came back to Google Fit, and it was 3 hours. They just seemed unfocused and undisciplined, and Apple seemed especially on fire this year. So I'm going to give it to Apple. But Jason, why would you say that Google's was better, other than you were interested in it and you were not interested in it?
You mean
anyway?
That's not good enough? Come on.
That's good enough for me, baby.
I don't know. I mean, I think what I'm excited about most with what Google introduced this year is kind of the potential, the groundwork. But, you know, you make a strong point, especially when you consider the fact of like the home automation side of things, right? Like we hoped to see Google's angle on that, particularly with Nest and all of the ties potentially into Google Now and all that kind of stuff. We saw nothing of that, but Apple came out of the gate strong. They're going to get a leg up on that. I don't know why I say it. I was there. Maybe that's the difference. I was at the conference and I was surrounded by people that were super excited about it. So maybe I'm tainted.
I think the chat room is also
Jason Howell.
A couple of people in the chat room are also making the point that Vic Gandotra has recently left the company or is leaving the company. I don't know what the timeline is on that, but in any event, he wasn't in the keynote,
right.
And he used to dominate the keynote with some extraordinarily polished and emotional presentations around Google and all the photo stuff you can do in Google+. And so this was a developer conference minus Vic Gandotra, who's just a great presenter. And so that I think that hit him a bit as well.
Yo, I'll tell you what. Here's my answer, Google, and I'll tell you why. First of all, you're right, Mike. They were so egotistical with that three-hour conference. I mean, who are these people? I have nothing else to do with my life than sit there and watch these people talk for 3 hours.
Actually, I don't. Yeah. but that's my problem. Go ahead.
But I'm sitting there, I'm going, you know, I could be out, you know, I don't know, eating a piece of cake. But the thing is, Apple, I think, was purely software, which was fine, and we saw some really great updates to iOS 8 and OS 10, and I think that the integration between the two is great. But Google, I think, again, is more forward-thinking, it's more future-focused, and some of the platforms that announced, I'm really excited about to see how they come out and how they improve our lives. So I think it's Google. I think it's Google. I don't know. We have to take a poll. We already took our internal poll, 2-1. Mike, you lose. No surprise there. But we got to go to the chat room and see ultimately who wins. Who's going to do the count? I'm not. Not me.
Actually, Greg is in us too, and so it's a tie. I know he's voting with me because I'm going to throw something at him if he doesn't. This is how democracy works, folks. Yeah, see, he's got 2 thumbs up, so that's a we win. No, I'm just kidding. But it's somewhat ironic, and then we'll close this part of the segment, but it's somewhat ironic that you said you have something better to do. You could be eating a piece of cake. In fact, Google scheduled lunch to begin at 11, but their presentation didn't end until 12. So there actually was an hour where you, in fact, could have been eating a piece of cake. So
that's
anyway.
Fantastic. I'll go eat a piece of cake now then.
You know, we only have 18 votes in the chat room, but right now Apple is only marginally beating out Google. So there you go.
All right, let's keep this tally going. I need some Google.
This is important stuff here.
Yes.
Hold on, I'm going to add Google.
And this is statistically valid, too,
yeah,
I'd like to point out. Well, Don Reisinger, I want to thank you for coming on. You're, of course, our Friday co-anchor. Thanks again for a wonderful Friday.
Would you say your favorite co-anchor? You're welcome. Yeah, no problem. I'm happy to.
I do appreciate it. And gosh, you just look lovely today. It has to be said once again.
Right? The light is up here. The new camera. Mike, it's a new me.
Yeah.
It's a new me.
It's amazing.
Love it.
Well, thanks again. Yeah. We'll see you next Friday.
All right. Thanks a lot.
All right,
Take care.
Reisinger. Okay. Well, you can subscribe to Tech News Today at twit.tv/TNT, and we encourage you to do that, of course. You can also subscribe on YouTube, youtube.com/Tech News Today. And please follow us on Twitter, Tech News Today TV. And we want to hear from you, of course. So comment on Twitter or Google Plus using the hashtag TechNewsToday, or send us email at tnt@twit.tv. And you can leave us voicemail by calling 260-TNT-SHOW. And don't miss our evening newscast, Tech News Tonight, at 4 p.m. Pacific tonight and every weeknight. My name is Mike Elgan. Thanks for tuning in. We'll see you Monday.